guys, I hope you all are staying safe and spooky out there, but also trying new things that fulfill your soul. If you guys are new, hi, welcome. We love having new friends join us along the journey. If you are a returning friend, then welcome back. It truly means the world to me that you enjoyed the other stories enough to come back for more. If you guys have a story you want to be featured on here, feel free to leave it in the comments, or you are more than welcome to send it in the email in the description box below. If you want to be left anonymous, that is absolutely fine. I respect your guys' wishes, but just make sure you let me know of these wishes when you send in your story. I am also open to reading any scary story. I know that we may have covered many paranormal stories or eerie places, but I can also cover your guys' let's not meet stories, or staying home alone stories, or just anything really that was, scary encounters to you. If you have already sent in your encounters, thank you so much for taking the time to message me. I am reading through them and trying to gather story topics from all the stories that have been sent in so that I can keep my videos nice and organized. When emailing, I do ask that something is left in the subject line, whether that is something relative to your story or, your story's title. And I realize this is a weird thing to ask, and I sound like one of those teachers that are constantly telling the class that when they email them, put something in the subject line. I promise I'm not trying to sound like that, but I just request this so that it helps me keep stories organized in videos, but also it's my way of verification, if you will. It's just so I know that you're not like a scammer of some sort, like you don't mean any harm, or that kind of thing, if that makes sense. Because we do live in a day and time where we just can't be too trusting of people, and I absolutely hate that. I also want to mention that in the comments, it is absolutely okay to agree or disagree with one another, as that is the absolute beauty of being our own selves and having free will and having our own different ways of thinking. But with that said, I ask that you guys remember to be kind and respectful to one another when interacting. You don't know what people are going through in their day-to-day lives, so it doesn't hurt you to be kind to one another. Also, if you guys hear pages flipping in the background, I assure you that your ears are not deceiving you. I have my ideas written out on paper. This is so that it helps me keep pace, as I am known to speak fast, but also it is to limit my stuttering. So essentially, reading things off paper is to help keep things flowing smoothly. So, alright. Anyways, now that I have gotten that out the way, go ahead and grab your cozy hobbies, or do that housework that you've been putting off for a while, doing the laundry, maybe sweeping around the house, maybe even doing dishes. But whatever you choose to do, go ahead and get cozy as we explore today's topic. I feel like today's topic may be a little longer, given that when I researched, a lot of stuff came up that I thought was very interesting. And although many of these may have logical explanations, it's really cool nonetheless to read about this and hear what you guys think. So, as said, let me know what you guys think in the comments about this. And it's not that I don't want to hear your guys' thoughts on any other thing, because I absolutely do. That's the beauty of the space right here. Like, I want it to be a space where we are interacting and conversing with one another and being able to be ourselves. But nonetheless, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this one as well. I also do apologize if I mispronounce anything in advance. So, anyways, today's destination is going to be the Tribec Mountains, which are positioned in the Nitra region of western Slovakia. Although the location of these mountains are primarily in the Nitra region, the mountain ranges cover two surrounding regions as well. The foundation on which the mountains lie are very ancient, given that the foundation is from the Paleozoic period, which happens to have taken place about 355 million years ago. But the mountains themselves were formed during the Alpine Ages, and this time frame was about 50 million years ago, give or take a few million years. The mountain range covers about 31 miles in length, since the Tribec Mountains merge with the Carpathian Mountains as well, so these mountain ranges are like a good few clustered together. When traveling along the trails, you may encounter a few treasures. You may notice medieval castles dispersed along the area with, maybe preserved ruins that once belonged to early Germanic tribes. So not only are you running into castles, but you may also find like old settlement homes from like early Germanic tribes, which I think is so cool. Depending who you come across along with your own research, some even report this area as Slovakia's version of the Bermuda Triangle, since there are sections of the forest in these mountains that people have simply vanished from and never to be seen again. These disappearances became highly publicized that these cases have came up in the Slovakia X-Files, and I'll tell you guys about the cases in just a moment. So, as said, while most of these can be chalked up to scientific evidence and logical evidence, if you ask locals of their accounts and what they've experienced, some believe that these occurrences are due to unseen and unexplainable forces. So, now that we have some backstory on this area, I want to talk about some of the people that have vanished in this area. As noted, I do apologize if I mispronounce any names. I might even stutter on a few of these names, if I'm being completely honest. But there were quite a handful of names that came up. So, with that said, let's look into the first story of Adam Samsley's disappearance. And this was the year 1929. He had been a forest worker of some sort, so his job entailed him keeping the forest floor clean and looking after it in general, making sure that there is no debris, just in a way like a park ranger. So one day in November 1929, this day had been particularly cold, so with the cold weather came snow, and it had been snowing like crazy. And going out to do his job had been just another day for Adam. Little did he know, this would be the last time anyone would ever see him. Adam attended work like any other day on this snowy morning, but he disappeared and was never to be seen again. Like, he just showed up at work, did his thing, and just vanished on his way home. So, with the snowfall being very heavy in these winter months, it would not be until the spring season of that following year, when things had been cleaned up and that a search expedition would occur. Well, the search expedition came up empty handed and thus left Adam Samsley to be lost and never to be found again. There is no traces of him. So that was one of the first earlier stories. Now we are going to move on to 13 months later to Maria Shavarova's disappearance. And this had occurred in December of 1930. Not that any disappearance is not sad or upsetting, but what I found particularly upsetting about this case is the fact that Maria had just been 18 years old. And she basically had her whole life ahead of her to live. And it ended so early. Even sadder, on the night she went missing, she had been doing what I would consider a good deed. On the night that she went missing, her destination was only 3 miles from her starting point. On the fateful evening she went missing, she had set out from her parents' house to bring some goodies to her grandparents. Well, when she never showed up to her grandparents' house, this was out of the ordinary for her. So alarm bells were just going off immediately that something was wrong. So a search expedition had been put together, and just like Adam's case, when the expedition was over, no results had been yielded, and just like Adam, Maria became lost and never to have shown up again. And as said, not that any of these cases isn't sad or upsetting, because these people had family, they had friends, they had people who cared about them. I feel what made this particular case about Maria sad was that she was, to me, just a baby. She was 18. She had her whole life ahead of her. That's first and foremost. And second of all, she was doing something great. Like, she wasn't thinking that this was going to be the last time she was going to be seen. She was just going to go see, good old grandma and grandpa, drop off some food and be on her merry way. I mean, I know I would appreciate that if I was a grandparent, that my grandchild was, walking on over to my place and helping me out. I thought it was so sad to be doing something so kind for others and just for that to be your last spot seen. So, we're now going to go on to the next case. This next case discussed will be about, I'm going to say, suspected disappearance of Andre Murgas. And what I mean by suspected is that the only records that point to it being of someone named Andre are police reports or police records. Other than the police records, there is no true confirmation of who the person actually is. So, as said for a few times now, I'm going to call this one a speculation, or the person's name is speculated. The story behind this goes that there had been a group of forest workers going about their day and doing their job, kind of similar to our very first story. They were forest workers, and there's a group of them, all got together, worked together, and whatnot. Well, at the end of the workday, all these workers had gone to their respective homes, but out of everyone, a single person had not successfully made it home. That person is the suspected Andre Murgas. And just like the other cases now, another search had gone by and passed, and the results were unfruitful. No trace of anyone being anywhere near, and this ended up leaving there to be another person that had gone missing in the Tribec area. So that is 3 people right now that have just gone missing. And I kind of want to point out a theme that most of these are happening in the winter months. But anyways, I'm not trying to spoil any sort of like anything right now. So now our next case is going to be very strange, and that is the case of Walter Fisher. His disappearance took place in 1938 or possibly 1939, and this is just dependent on the resources that you guys refer to. So, Mr. Fisher was a very hardworking factory employee just trying to make ends meet for his family. His typical work schedule consisted of working Monday through Saturday, weekly, leaving his only day off to be Sunday. On just about every day he had off, so those Sundays, he took the time to go see his wife and kids. But on one cold Sunday in January, things kind of switched up for a little bit. So one Sunday, rather than go home and see his family, Walter just kind of wanted a relaxing stroll through the mountains. His goal was to journey out and go see the ruins of Castle Black, and he ultimately wanted to be back home by the end of the day. I mean, he wasn't trying to make it like a few days worth of an expedition. He just wanted to walk around and be home by the end of the day. So, with this in mind, he set foot on his journey. Unfortunately, he did not make it home he did not make it home that day. The strange thing about this is that it did not take until a month for anyone to realize that Mr. Fisher had gone missing. When a month had passed and Walter's wife hadn't heard or seen him, she then chose to report him as a missing person. And, not to get on a side rant, but if his routine was to show up weekly on Sundays, with that being his only day off, why did it take about 4 Sundays for her to report to law enforcement? Maybe things were different back then, and this may not have been out of the ordinary. I don't know that culture. But to me, if this was a routine to see him every Sunday, and the day he hadn't shown up is the day I would have probably been freaking out. I mean, to me, that just sounds so casual. Is that just one Sunday, about a month later, she's like, oh, I haven't seen Walter. Okay, I'm going to report this. Some resources that I looked into said that it could have been possible she was having an affair and hadn't noticed that he was not around because she had been occupied. I don't know. It's speculation. I don't know. But to me, I just thought it was very suspicious for a month to go by and then someone to say, oh, yeah, that's not normal. But anyways, 2 to 3 months go by without a trace. And then in early May of that same year, Walter had been found. The creepy part of this discovery is that when he had been found, he was unconscious, but he was clearly alive. He had multiple burn injuries scattered on his face and body. To make things stranger, when he was last seen, alert, and oriented, he had been very close to reaching his destination. When he was recovered, he was 22 miles further than where he should have been. And even more unsettling, when he was found, it was said that his mental condition had severely declined to the point that he had to be put in a mental facility for the rest of his life. The Walter Fisher that had disappeared in late January was not the same that had been resurfaced months later. Because, as said, he was of clear mind, he was, alert and oriented, he knew everything that was going on, whatever. So that version of him was now gone when he had been resurfaced. And out of all the reports we speak about today, he was the only person to have not been truly lost to the Tribec Mountains. But as said, when he was found, he couldn't even recall what happened to him. He didn't remember anything. Like, he just wasn't the same after. So who knows what he encountered for 2 to 3 months before being found again. So now we're going to jump to the year of 1966. And this story is going to revolve around Jan and Alina. They were a husband and wife duo that had, gone missing. The couple had been said to be driving their car along the area. And what I mean by the area, so it was located at the entrance to the forest, or where their car was found. It was at the entrance of the forest that had led to the Tribec Mountains when the car had been found. Both of them had been reported missing by their employers in the month of February, so both of them had not shown up to work. Them going missing like this was just out of the ordinary and not in character for them. Because as said, one day they were going to work, the next they're reported missing because they hadn't been, seen by both of the people that they worked for. When their vehicle had been discovered, nothing had been found out of place that would indicate something serious had occurred here. I'd say that the only strange thing about the car's recovery was that the car doors had been left open. But when further inspection occurred, it had appeared that nothing was stolen or to be out of place to investigators. As the other instances went, a search had been started, but same as others, nothing came up, and it was as if the couple had simply vanished, as there was no traces. So now we're going to leap to the 1980s. Anton and Topol went missing, but when I was doing research, I did not see what specific year it was, other than this took place in the 1980s. So for all I know, it could have been 1989, or it could have been 1981. I don't know, but nonetheless, it was in the 1980s when Antonin's story took place. So Antonin was very kept off and just kept to himself and just closed off to society. And this became worse after his significant other passed away. So he was already quiet, already to himself. that wasn't out of the ordinary for him, but it just amplified when his significant other had passed. So for him to not come around town for long periods of time was not something that was not uncommon for him. It only became clear that something was wrong when his post office was trying to reach out to him, but they could not get a hold of him to deliver a message. Due to the silence that the post office was receiving, police were sent to his house to do like a welfare check, just make sure he was okay. And when law enforcement arrived to Mr. Antonin's house, it had been found vacant. But this wasn't thought to be too mysterious because it was said that one of Antonin's favorite pastimes had been, going to take long walks in the forest around the Tribec Mountains. There was still no trace of him to be found, especially all these years later. At this point, they assumed him to be passed away, so they demolished his house. And just like others, he simply just vanished in this region, never to be seen again. We go a few years later to the 1995 disappearance of Jan Sala. Police had been cruising in the area when they came across a deserted car that had been escorted to the side of the road. When police approached the car, they noticed it had been left unlocked with thousands of dollars in cash that had not been taken with. Like, it was just left behind. When license plate tests had been ran, the results came up of the vehicle had been in possession of someone named Jan Sala. Police decided that they would wait a while for Jan to show back up, because now there were more questions as to how and why this person had been in ownership of this much cash, just, readily available. Well, Jan never showed up, and now a criminal investigation was being started. Just like every other investigation in this area, Jan Sala became another face left unsurfaced from these searches. Now we go about 20 years later to the disappearance of Yaroslav. Unlike the majority of the cases discussed, this situation took place in June, a nice, warm summer month, compared to the harshly cold seasons that most of these occurrences have happened in. I will also say that Yaroslav's last name is unknown to this day. But nonetheless, this individual had lived in a little village that had actually surrounded the foresty areas to these mountains, and Yaroslav was known by people in their village to love to venture out into the forest area just to go on strolls and, collect little forest goodies along the way, and nothing out of the ordinary. Well, on one fateful June day, Yaroslav had done nothing different. He was going to set foot to go find some good old forest mushrooms. Just like many others that stepped foot in the forest, Yaroslav never was to be seen again, and he just appeared to have completely vanished. This time round, when they held a search party, it was such a significantly bigger search party that participated. Despite having the amount of people involved, Yaroslav was not found and still has not been found to this day. I'm not sure if the case is still going or still open, given that it's probably about 15 years later now. But yeah, that's Yaroslav's story. So, is what is going on in the forest/mountain ranges paranormal, or could it be chalked up to scientific knowledge? Natives to this area genuinely believe that there are supernatural forces taking place deep within. The continuous disappearances have also fueled the fire. An instance that may happen is that if a person is utilizing a device to help with navigation, compass, watch, or phone, the device starts to go haywire and it throws individuals off trail, leading for them to get lost or to be going in circles for hours. I'd also like to mention that these people venturing out are not amateurs, they are well-trained hikers who also have the necessary equipment to venture out in this area, and they've just got so much experience. So they are not rookies by any means. Locals say that it is also common for temperature dips to occur randomly in the forest. As I said in a previous video, temperature dips seemingly out of nowhere are said to occur with paranormal activity. So locals may even claim that the forest energy shifts or changes. This goes hand in hand with the temperature changes that occur with the paranormal activity. Between the energy changes, navigation issues, and malfunctioning technology, this is what causes the locals to believe that there are supernatural forces taking place. I also want to throw some logic in here and acknowledge that there may be scientific reasoning behind the software technical difficulties. We know that the Earth has magnetic fields that have been known to affect technology functioning, and when there are technology issues, it can leave someone to go in circles or get off track since the malfunctioning device is being or utilizing the Earth's magnetic fields, it's feeding off of that. So, with that said, why are we having so many vanishings in this area though? Despite the technical issues, there's people going missing and never being found, no tracings of them being found. I want to know what you guys think. Are you guys leaning more towards the spooky side of things, or are you guys leaning more towards the scientific side? Or maybe it may be a little both. How coincidental is it that most of these also have occurred in cold winter months compared to the summer months? Whatever you guys think, let me know in the comments below, as I'm also curious to see where we all stand on this idea. I'll be honest, I feel personally that it may be a little bit of both going on. I believe the magnetic fields play a part in the discombobulation, the technology not working well. I feel like I could chalk that up to the magnetic fields just being so powerful in that area. But the vanishings and there being absolutely no trace of anyone ever existing or setting foot is eerie to me. That's the part where I'm maybe there's a little bit more going on. But then again, I may be biased. Forest and wooded areas just give me the heebie-jeebies, and I will not be stepping foot in a forest, by myself at least. Well, anyways, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you have enjoyed today's story. If you did, please like and follow, and do that so that you can follow me on this spooky journey. Don't forget, if you have any stories you want featured, it doesn't have to be paranormal. If you don't have any, of those spooky paranormal stories, but it could just be, or let's go back to that. Whether you don't have those stories or maybe you just don't believe in that kind of stuff, that's absolutely okay. But I am open to any scary story being sent in. As said, whether it's paranormal or just scary occurrences that have happened to you. Lastly, I want to encourage you to get out into the world and do something soothing for your soul and just try a new earthly experience as long as it is legal and won't get you hurt or in trouble. Like, just get out of your comfort zone and enjoy this lifetime and just spread goodness into this world in a time full of negativity. Like, let's be positive and try to spread that on. But I guess until next time, stay safe and stay spooky out there. Bye.